radio done right.
No nonsense, real and raw, just like you like it.
He's corrupt, he's inexperienced, and he lies.
Broadcasting from a broom closet in the Arizona Lotus Studios, it's Beef Vegan Presents.
Yo, welcome back to the show. It's Beef Vegan Presents live on Rock 102.1 KFMA, streaming worldwide at KFMA.com on this beautiful Wednesday, October 4th. Good morning, Weirdo.
Good morning.
And good morning, Tucson. Thank you guys for tuning into the show. I have a lot of stuff to get to today. I have a couple minutes of a late start. I had to throw an extra song in this morning because we got detoured on the way into work. Everything was looking fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then another fatal. I mean, we keep having these fatals happening in the middle of the night. This one on I-10 and Prince. And how do I know it's fatal? It's because they block everything off. They got to be investigating. So if you got to, get the I-10 and Prince exit going northbound, don't. They're just going to reroute you to Ruthroth. And yeah, it's nuts. Trying to find out information on it. There's really nothing on What's Up Tucson, or it just says crash. But that's not the only fatal crash. There was another fatal crash last night on a speedway in Silverville. This one involving a pedestrian. It's, and then we were talking about last week. We got a theme going on. It's crazy too. In the middle of the night, there ain't that many cars on the road. I mean, there's really,
right.
I don't know, man. Maybe it's all this just like street racing straight into light poles. But let's hope everyone involved who didn't pass away is okay. But yes, it definitely put a wrench in our routine this morning, but we'll be fine.
Right. Well, considering this is crash at Prince and I-10 at 1:32 a.m. So they've been there for a minute.
Yeah, of course. And they're going to be there when the show's over. And that's what they do with fatals. It takes forever.
Mm-hmm.
Forever. I mean, when that fatal accident that happened or it wasn't even a fatal accident on a Speedway, or I'm sorry, Grant and First, they had that whole street blocked off for like 14 hours. So it takes TPD a long time to look at every little speck and crumb. And I don't know. I feel like there's a way to make it go a little faster, but I guess you got to cross your T's, dot your I's when it comes to, death investigations and lawsuits and things like that. That's what it really comes down to, right?
Yeah, make sure all the paperwork's filled out correctly.
Right. All that nonsense. Let's see, but I got to turn the page here. So I'm not talking about fatal accidents all morning. Today is a big day because we've been getting this warning for a while, but everyone's cell phone will get an alarm at 2:20 Eastern time today, which is, I think it's 11:20 our time, if not 12. It's 11:20. If we're still on Pacific time, who knows? So this is just like an emergency broadcast signal that used to go out in the 80s and 90s all the time, usually on TVs. And now they're doing it through all these cell phones. Not a big deal, you would think, right?
I don't think so.
Wrong. Well, you are wrong because, a lot of conspiracy theorists online have been talking, and I don't know if you've been noticing it. Maybe I just have wacky friends on social media of a lot of memes happening about how this is all just a grand scheme to activate the next virus.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's some of the conspiracy theories that you're going to be seeing on social media today. And this is why your weird uncle won't be answering his phone today as well. They claim that the alert on people's cell phone will be used to activate nanoparticles introduced into people's bodies. How are they introduced to our bodies, weirdo?
How?
Oh, by the vaccine.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yes.
Oh, it's going to activate the vaccine.
Yes, it's activating the vaccine that's in the bodies, and then it will turn us into, is it mutants? Is it zombies? Is it lizard people? I don't know. I'm going to have to do a Facebook poll to see what exactly we're going to turn into, or the nanobodies inside our body will then evaporate into vapor, then leave our bodies, thus affecting everyone around. So, the people who didn't get the vaccine, you're going to get our nanobody virus for people who did get the vaccine. Did I get the vaccine? Yes. Was it mandatory? Yes. I was working for this company and they said, hey, you got to get the vaccine. I'm like, hey, you know what? You give me the effing vaccine, man. You know what I mean? I just want to get this over with. And that we all wanted to put COVID behind us. All right.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have signed up for a vaccine if I knew nanoparticles would be activated with emergency broadcast systems that would turn me into a lizard person and infect other people around me. I mean, seriously, like, what about all the people who aren't vaccinated around me now? I'm going to be immunating. It's already kicking in, weirdo. I can't even say words.
So you're not coming into work tomorrow?
No, I'm coming in.
Okay.
Yeah. And everyone's going to get infected. All right. So there's many conflicting explanations as to how or why this will happen. But there's one video where a woman says that the test will trigger graphene oxide that was put into people's blood through the COVID-19 vaccines, which, you know, I read the ingredients and I guess I skipped over graphene oxide, but apparently it's in there. And when that happens, the government will be able to monitor people and control them like remote control toys.
Remote control toys.
Yeah.
Very cool.
No, I mean, I do understand with your girlfriend, you like to use toys, but it's different. It's different in this situation. Not to go down this rabbit hole, but graphene oxide is not an ingredient in any COVID vaccine. And even if it was, scientists say you can't activate it. And it makes no sense that it could somehow interact with wireless networks. But that's neither here nor there. You know, I mean, really, when it comes to a lot of these theories, it's about the beauty of the imagination, the creativity, not necessarily the details or the accuracy. It's everything else that really makes it so appealing, where you just want to sink your teeth into it. Like, oh, yeah, dude. Oh, graphene oxide? It sounds legit to me. Have I ever heard that before? No. That's what makes it sound so legit. It sounds super legit.
It really does.
Yeah. And then, you know, here's a news flash. The government's been controlling us anyways because they've been taking away our, you know, like our wealth and erasing the middle class, keeping us a slave to the system. So we got to work our ass off just to get by. Oh, but that's not a conspiracy theory. That's a reality.
Yeah.
So you're worried about graphene oxide. I'm worried about like if I'm going to spend more than I earn this month.
Yeah.
Because a McDonald's combo meal is $17.
And they're bringing back the McRib.
Yeah. And Amazon raised all the prices for all companies across the board. The FTC is actually currently investigating this. They did this about last year. Amazon jacked up their prices to pressure other companies to raise their prices as well. This is a violation of the Federal Trade Commission. Hopefully, they will slap Bezos' wrists and he might lose $100.
Yeah.
All right. So we started off the day talking about poverty and conspiracy theories and fatal car crash. It's going to be a good show. Keep it here all morning long. Your morning morons coming up at the Lincoln Park. We got tickets to give away for Asking Alexandria and show. All right, let's get back here live on the podcast broadcast here. All right, so I'm fixing this up. Please welcome our guest who sat through that entire rant of our show open. He came across our radar when we were interviewing Electric Callboy, and to prepare for the interview, we were talking with the tour manager, and that's who tankthetech is. But to prepare for Electric Callboy, I actually was doing research of the band, came across this fantastic channel. Which immediately got my attention, was all the research I needed to do. And then I went down the rabbit hole for a couple hours. Then the next week, we go up to Phoenix to see the show. And who is the tour manager making everything happen behind the scenes? The guy who runs this fantastic channel just started 2 years ago, over 40 million plays.
Yeah.
And what's the count? What is it?
241,000 followers or subscribers. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Just blowing it up. Please welcome Tank to Tech. Tank, good to see you, my friend.
Oh, good to see you guys again.
Good morning.
Yes, dude. And of course, you were just on this run with Electric Callboy that lasted about 6 weeks?
No, it was a little shorter than that. I mean, I think from the time I left home to when I got back, it was like exactly a month.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a real quick run.
Yeah, you got to think about their schedule, though. I mean, they went straight from touring in Europe, straight to here, straight back to do more shows. So they've got a way more grueling schedule than I do with them right now.
That's true. You know, and there's so much to catch up with Tank on because even though it was only a month, it was an adventure nonetheless. You were able to put together some great content. The Blue Ridge Festival was such a shit show. You were there behind the scenes. So then you turned into this kind of music journalist, which you kind of are in a way. You developed into this journalistic lane that you've been, creating on your channel. And so, yeah, you were there to witness everything behind the scenes. And since you've worked so many different festivals, you saw from like the promoter aspect and the way that it was run, that it wasn't weather that affected this. It was flawed from top to bottom, right?
Well, I mean, to say the weather wasn't a reason is a little unfair. Like, weather was a reason, but like not the reason. Like, they're making it sound like it's like. But the thing is with Electric Callboy, we were there on Friday, and it was Thursday was with the weather. Was like it was crazy. I saw videos of it. Like, we had friends there. Like, it was like hurricane weather on Thursday.
Right.
The day we were there, it was beautiful. It was beautiful all day. And even the grounds weren't that bad in terms of like being wet and muddy and stuff like that. So, no, I mean, I think that video that I put out about that kind of speaks for itself. But I mean, in 18 years of touring with bands, I mean, it was the most unorganized thing I've ever seen. And, you know, what's interesting about this whole thing is, you know, I understand why a lot of bands don't talk about this stuff because it's business. You don't want to burn bridges. And, you know, it's funny because the crew guys, I wasn't going to do any content on that tour at all because for
you were
me,
focused on the tour.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, even the guys on the first day, like Kevin and Nico were like, "Oh, did you bring your camera out?" I was like, "No." Like, you guys are paying me to do a job, but I'm going to do it. And they're like, "Well, you can do content if you want," which I thought was cool, but it's just too much to focus on. So
hold that thought for real quick. We are talking with Tank the Tech live on our podcast broadcast stream, youtube.com/beefvegan, about the Blue Ridge Music Festival. We're giving you all the behind the scenes scoop as to why that music festival failed and why it may fail in the future, and more with Tank the Tech. You can join us youtube.com/beefvegan or keep it right here because we'll have more with Tank right after Bad Omens, The Death of Peace of Mind on Rock 102.1 KFMA. Sorry, let me explain because we went right into the intro. So this is our podcast broadcast. So it's a mixture of being live on the FM side and still doing the stream. So we were on the FM side for a good little chunk of that, and I needed to back sell so people knew what we were talking about going into. Sure. Yeah. So my apologies. So continue. So you beautiful the day of that you guys showed up there. Yeah, everything looked good.
But it was very clear, like really fast, that like nobody knew what was going on. I mean, the second we showed up, like they didn't know where to park us. They didn't know what was going on. Like, runners were impossible. Like, it was just insanely unorganized. And to the point where, I mean, like I said in that video, like our load in took 6 hours, which is insane. And now
it had a green room with no AC for the band, nothing.
I mean, in the green rooms, I'm not kidding you, were probably, I mean, they were like little mini trailers that you would pull on the back of a pickup truck. Like, we had a touring party of 15 people, and it was literally the size of like a large bathroom. So it's like, obviously not everybody's going to fit in there anyways, even six band members, let alone the 15 crew members. But all that aside, it was kind of interesting to hear other takes as well, because immediately after that show, our crew guys with the Electric Callboy crew were like, "You should do a video on this." And I was like, I don't know. Like, this was kind of like the first time that I really, like, I've talked about music business before and behind the scenes stuff, but this was the first time I was like, gloves off, let's go. Who cares? Right. And I'm glad I did, because a lot of other people started talking about it too. And, you know, stuff like this just should not be acceptable. And I'm not talking about the behind the scenes, the way that the bands and crew were treated. I'm talking the fan stuff too, because I walked the grounds at certain points. It was brutal. And I saw stories online of people that spent thousands of dollars to like get camping passes and shuttle passes. Like, there are people that traveled from all over the world for that festival. Oh yeah. And are now effectively out thousands of dollars because the whole thing got shut down and canceled. And, you know, I found out later, I did not know this, that about the time Electric Callboy was on stage on that Friday was when every one of the stagehands went on strike and walked out of that festival. Wow. So that explains why we didn't have anybody loading us out either. And we didn't know that. So the next day, the festival said they canceled due to weather, but it was really because they literally had no labor or anybody running anything. Because
they were doing it, so they were so disorganized and also so toxic to work for in that situation that everyone decided, you know what, F this money, I'm out, and decided not to do it. That's crazy, you know. And we're getting back on the FM side, real quick. That's Bad Omens, The Death of Peace of Mind, new music on Rock 102.1 KFMA, talking with Tankthetech, who is a tour manager who's been a roadie for since he was practically 18 or yeah and is currently at home in his home studio right now, where he hosts a YouTube channel at tankthetech, which is massive. And he was at the Blue Ridge Music Festival, if you recall, turned into a huge mess. And we're talking about the behind the scenes strife as to what made that festival shut down, and it's not the weather. And the reason why I want to bring that up is because it is something that needs to be talked about more within this industry, because we're oversaturated when it comes to festivals, and a lot of festivals are all over the country, right? And so many times you'll come across like horror stories about festivals being put together by promoters taking shortcuts and making it unsafe for fans and making it like a miserable experience for employees. When I saw Blue Ridge happen, it reminded me of a festival in Tempe, Arizona. It was in the summertime. It was like record heat, and there was literally no water anywhere to be found, backstage or anywhere, and they oversold it, and it turned into a nightmare. And these things happen like all over the country, just not like widely publicized like it was for Blue Ridge.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, you know, I actually might know what festival you're talking about in Arizona, because I've encountered something like that before, where I remember we did a festival once where it was like 120 degrees out. We walked backstage and all they had was beer. I was like, do you just think that like all these rock bands just live off beer? Like they don't need to hydrate like everybody else? Like,
right.
But now the crazy thing is, I spoke to some of my friends that were also at Blue Ridge on different stages.
Mm-hmm.
Like good examples, I talked to Mike Caputo, who's drumming for Job for a Cowboy. Mm-hmm. And I was like, honestly, dude, how was it for you? And he goes, to be fair, not as bad as it was for you. He goes,
okay.
But we had a different situation. He goes, we came in with minimal gear. We didn't have the multiple buses like you guys did. We didn't have to do a cross load. Like, we were so pressed for time that we just showed up with all of our backline. We set up, we played, we were done. Like that was that. And, you know, on the main stage too, you got to think like Slipknot and Danzig and the bands that were on the main stage the day we were there, they were able to pull their semi trucks in to the stage. So they didn't have to deal with the same kind of stuff. So, you know, to be fair, from the working aspect of it, it all depended on what your situation and what stage you were on. But overall, the whole production and how it was for the fans that were there, it was absolutely horrible, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like seeing what the fans had to go through. I mean, when we were cruising around to like signing sessions and stuff, I was just looking at the people in the crowd, and there are people that are just trying to like, you know, take shade anywhere they could. Because
right.
It's so hot out, nobody could find water anywhere. And now we're seeing in Virginia, the Virginia Department of Health is saying that they're investigating because tons and tons of people that were there have gotten like giardia or intestinal stuff from the water stations that were there. It's insane.
Yeah.
Right. And when you were talking in the video, you're like, this is not a diva thing. Like there was literally no food or drink for any of the bands on the stage that you guys were at. And like I sat there and I was like, well, duh, like you need, like that's a long day, 14 hours with no food or drink. And then, you know, and then obviously expected to go perform their best set ever, which by the way, that's amazing. 20 minutes that they got everything set up.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I got to really hand it to their crew, man. They have one of the best crews I have ever worked with in my life. And like they pulled all of that together in literally like 20, 30 minutes. Like the video walls on stage, all the sound, everything. Our lighting director had never even gone out to the front of the house that day to look at the lighting desk or program anything until the intro to the show was playing.
And then so he's doing everything on the fly.
Yep.
Beautiful.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
That's super amazing.
Yeah. So we're talking with Tankthetech, who has a YouTube page. He started during pandemic, right? But he's been a roadie in the music business ever since he started touring with his band INEPT. We're going down the rabbit hole with Tank. Talk about how to do reaction videos, what blew up his channel, and everything else about behind the scenes in the music business. Next on Beef Vegan Presents, keeping the conversation moving on the podcast broadcast, youtube.com/beefvegan. Clear. All right. So, let's talk about this. Okay. first and foremost, you were touring. I have so much back information on you. I got you.
I'm like shocked that you just dropped my old band name.
Yeah. Oh, and you know what? Let me shock you real quick. So, Tank, I could tell you this right now from getting to know Tank, meeting him personally, super nice, but you could tell right off the bat, he's well-spoken and almost like a natural presenter and entertainer. And it goes way back. In fact, when he was playing bass for his band INEPT, you could tell even young Tank had what it took to be a YouTube presenter. And I'll give you the prime example right here. Let's check out young Tank real quick.
Oh my God.
By the way, Ian, this is your life.
Yeah, check this out.
How's it going? My name is Ian Roberts. I play bass for the band INEPT, and I'm here to show you my section of the van. I'm the only person in our band that drives when we were on tour. Kind of had a record going, but one day Anthony blew it for me. He jumped in the driver's seat when I was getting gas. So. First guy is my lucky tiki man. I always have to have him here. I've never gotten pulled over, never gotten in an accident.
Quick question. You still have that lucky tiki man?
No, I do not. I have no idea where it is.
Look at that clean shave Tank the Tech. Oh my gosh.
Baby Tank without a beard, huh? I mean, when you started on YouTube in like 2020 during COVID, you still had a beard. It wasn't as like prominent and badass as it is right now. But like you still had.
The funny thing is, a week before I started YouTube, I had a beard like this. But I've had a beard like this for years. I just shaved like right before I started YouTube. So once I started, I just let it grow again.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and so let's talk about YouTube because again, when pandemic hit, you were touring with which band?
Like I had been guitar teching for Dustin Lynch, country artist, for about 5.5, 6 years.
Okay, nice. Yep. So every tour that he'd go on, he'd book you up.
Yep.
Yeah. So you were guitar teching for Dustin Lynch. COVID came, and you're like, oh shit. Well, there's my revenue stream, 100% based on the road. And then you had your buddy Andy give you a heads up and say, why don't you start doing reaction videos?
Yeah, well, it wasn't even just like reaction videos. Like I actually first started because with COVID, it's like, what can I do from home to make money?
Right.
So Andy gave me the idea to do Twitch streaming, and I was an idiot. I was just like, oh, this will be easy. I'll stream video games that I like to play and people watch and I'll make tons of money. No, wrong. That is not as easy.
Can you inform my 9-year-old about this, please? Because that's his career plan.
All right.
Yeah, so, I mean, I went like a month of streaming on Twitch where every time I streamed for like 4 hours a day, I had like 2 people watching, which for anybody that doesn't know is not enough to make money.
Yes, no, we know.
And then my buddy Andy, who is our stage manager with Dustin, was like, dude, what's really big? Like reaction videos on YouTube. Like, and he goes, I bet you'd have the personality for that. And we got people commenting in here. What's up, Jake?
Yeah. Jake's been watching you since the beginning, which is awesome.
Yeah, so I was just like, okay, let's try this. And without full honesty, I knew nothing about video editing, audio for computer, nothing. Like I went online and I bought a cheap camera, a cheap microphone, a cheap PC, and was just like, yeah, let's do this.
Right.
And
then your first reaction video, first video that you post gets over 100,000 views. So out the gate, you hit it out the park.
That happened later, though, to be fair. Like, if I went in my analytics right now, it was probably like, when it was posted, it was probably a few thousand views, and that happened over time. But, like, what really hit it big, honestly, was Hypa Hypa by Electric Cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
I was like 2 months late to that video. Like, I had no idea what it was. And again, my friend Andy was the one that was like, you should check this band out because he likes a lot of, like, really wild stuff. And I remember like checking out that video and then really getting into the band, and over the next couple of years, really getting into the band. So to think that is reacting to Electric Callboy is one of the things that like blew up my YouTube channel and stuff like that. And then fast forward to I'm their North American tour manager now is kind of wild how the universe works sometimes.
I know, it's awesome. And speaking of which, we're going to play Hypa Hypa on the air. I'll let you introduce it on the radio. So let's do that right now.
102.1.
All right, yeah, Rock 102.1 KFMA. Welcome back to Beef Vegan Presents. I got Tank the Tech on with us on youtube.com/beefvegan. And Tank, we get to take some liberties here on the radio that kind of bending and breaking the rules that most radio shows don't get to do. And one of those rules that and gifts that we were given by bending the rules so much. They said, look, if you stop messing with our playlist, we'll give you an opportunity to play whatever song you want each and every day in a 9 o'clock hour. And we call that the single song takeover. Now, I want you to introduce our single song takeover today because, you know, this band you have a connection with. Not only are you the North American tour manager of Electric Callboy, but in a lot of ways, that relationship helped you build the channel to what it is today. Because you were just telling us how that reaction video to the song that we're going to introduce kind of puts you on the map on YouTube. And then from there, and this is absurd and amazing at the same time, right? You become a fan of a band, and all you're doing is professing your appreciation and your fandom for their music, and it blows up, and the band sees it and then befriends you and says, you know what, you're a pretty cool guy. Why don't you become a part of our crew? And that's exactly what happened.
It's wild. Because it's just wild, dude. Like, you put it perfectly. It's just crazy to even hear that out loud.
Right. Yeah. And so, and then with that, that's where we met Tank as the tour manager. And he did a fantastic job, by the way. Went from Partech roadie to TM, which is a career move and an advancement. We're going to talk about how you get in the industry and how you learn how to do that. Because I know you have, we have a lot of local musicians out there that are wondering how you can make money in the, music industry,
right,
by not playing music. Spoiler alert: don't play music. You can make money in the industry. But we will continue all that, and I want to give you the opportunity to introduce our single song takeover. So, Tank, I don't know if you ever done any radio DJing before, but all you're going to do is say, and this is introduce the band, the song title, and then say on Rock 102.1 KFMA. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go.
All right. Coming up next on 102.1 Rock KFMA, we've got Hypa Hypa by Electric Callboy.
Claire, there you go.
God, I love that
there
song.
You go. Just
so
introduce
much.
that song, man. Killing it.
That's cool.
So fun.
So yeah, every time I play Hypa Hypa, which is not in rotation on the station yet because management and all this bullshit, but every time I play it, I get emails be like, what was that song? Like, yeah. So the more we keep featuring it in a single song takeover, the more we're gonna like kind of beat them down and get this song in rotation.
And I know how that stuff works. Like I've worked for bands long enough. I know how radio works. And it's funny. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I do have like a YouTube short where I was talking about a video where I literally said, and I just got to be honest, I was like, we were talking about radio people backstage at shows. And more specifically, I got to admit, this is more country radio, but I was like, radio people are the worst. Like, and again, this is my experience with country radio. Country radio is so big, and all of those radio hosts know that they have control over everything. So when they're backstage at shows, they expect the crews, the bands, everybody to bend over backwards for them. And I got to admit, a lot of the radio people I met on this tour in the rock world, completely different.
A lot cooler? That's good. I was hope so. Here, actually, I want to play this for you. This is what he's talking about.
Oh, they're the fucking worst, dude. They're the absolute worst people in the music industry. They're fucking lame, and they don't realize they're lame because everybody's kissing their ass because they know that they fucking control what gets on the radio. But I just want to be the person to say, like, if any fucking radio hosts ever see this video, which I don't know if they will, you guys are fucking lame. Nobody actually really enjoys you backstage at our shows. Our artists just tell us that we have to fucking put up with you. They're the fucking worst, dude.
So,
I'll stop it.
No. So again,
I'm not gonna make that my alarm to wake up to in the morning, just on repeat.
So again, that was a video where I believe we were talking about, like, we had started talking about country music, and I will say I still stand by that. I don't care. Country radio hosts are the absolute worst people I've encountered. There are specific ones, but radio in country is so much different than rock radio and hip hop radio and stuff that it's like, I'm not kidding. I've had artists tell me, hey, just so you know, so-and-so is going to be at our show tonight, and they are daddy. Whatever they want, you do it. Because they control if we get played on the radio. And it's like, and those country radio people know that. So I can see the power
in
Like-
country radio doing that. But at the same time, when I saw that, I laughed because I've been around radio for a long time, over 15 years, and you're not wrong about a lot of people. It goes beyond country music, for sure.
There's some major divas.
Yes, absolutely. But it is funny. But yeah, it is amazing to see the kind of like the power hold that country radio has, because people like a lot of people still listen to country on the radio. You know what I mean? Like
Huge.
Yeah, it is.
My dad being one of them.
Like really, really quickly, one of the craziest stats we read online recently on one of my streams was that at any given point in time, like the number one song on rock radio, like, you say it's got between like 3 and 5 million audience impressions a week. Country music radio has like 80 million for the number one. There's so many people listening to country radio. It's insane. So those radio people still have tons of power. And when they're at the shows and they're in my way when I'm guitar teching, and be like, hey, can you move? And they'll be like, do you know who I am? And I was like, yes, I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who dropped the "you know who I am" line is certified douchebag for sure.
Just respond with, do you know who I am? I'm working. Get out of the way.
Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah. I mean, you think if I showed up into a radio booth somewhere and was just like in the way and trying to touch stuff, they'd probably tell me to leave too.
Right. Well, I've had situations like co-hosts and stuff do the same thing where you'll be a little too drunk backstage at like a station sponsored festival, try to get some pictures and then get reamed by like stage manager and like, I don't care who the fuck you are. It's like, wasn't me though. I keep my cool. I try to like, first off, I live backstage and some of those things like Van Buren, like that's my city.
Venue.
So
super good venue.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick because you're not afraid to basically make some noise and in this industry. And you just put out a video about Live Nation. Now we talked about this, obviously we're following this, and I do have musician friends who were part of the people that were involved talking to Congress about the fair pay and Live Nation not taking care of their artists and really running this monopoly. You point out the monopoly better, I think, than anybody, and a couple of things behind the scenes. But Live Nation announced that they were going to cut the merch fees for other club shows, clubs being basically the size of the Van Buren. So you're talking about 2,000 person venues and lower, which was good news, plus a $1,500 stipend. But Tank did some research and realized that it's not all that it's cracked up to be, and it might not last for long. So it's kind of like a PR move, right?
I think it is. I mean, the immediate outcome of everything is, yes, bands are going to get more money from merch. And I have heard from some bands directly now in the last few days that they are getting an extra $1,500. Now that $1,500 on top has come in the form of $750 worth of Shell gas fuel cards, not cash, which that's fine, whatever. It's still $750 in fuel cards.
If they're filling up their own van, yes, then that's understandable. But if it's a bus, then
I mean, $750 is a bus fuel up. That's about what it is right now. But, it's this whole thing to me does seem like a glorified PR thing because Live Nation's had a lot of heat on them lately. They've had a lot of heat, a lot of outspoken artists. I mean, even when we go back to the 90s and we saw like Pearl Jam and other people taking on, Congress and stuff like that about it, they're at a point now where, I know the current administration has gotten involved and said Ticketmaster has to do like the all-in pricing where they have to divulge everything ahead of time. Like they needed a PR win. And this is absolutely a PR win because the second it was announced, bands went crazy. They did. Like, we won. I was like, yeah, you got to think about the long game here because there's no billion-dollar corporation is just going to do something like this just because. Like there's a long game here. Now, what that long game is, I don't 100% know. It could be putting pressure on the independent venues. It could be tax write-offs, although I've heard from some people that are actual tax attorneys and stuff that it's not the write-off you think it would be. So I don't think it's that, but it's kind of wild because going back to the Van Buren, I loved that venue and the people that worked there, their production manager, all the way through their security people, their stagehands, everybody. It was a wonderful day. They're phenomenal people. So there are great people that work at Live Nation at their venues on the venue side. But like any corporation at the corporate level, there's always some self-serving ulterior motive going on. But now we just need to wait and find out what it is.
Yeah, and I've explained this to our listeners here in Tucson because there's a lot of big shows that are now Phoenix only, and the reason why all these artists are going Phoenix only is because Live Nation doesn't own any venues, to my knowledge, in Tucson. So after pandemic, especially. It seems like, they gobbled up all the top talent and they put them in their own venues to kind of recoup any kind of losses, even though I know that they had tons of write-offs during pandemic as well and probably had bailouts. But yeah, so those bands are going strictly there because they're gonna make more than just the ticket sales. They make the entire nut from top to bottom. And then on top of that, the merch fees. So with them announcing this, it did seem like putting a Band-Aid on a severed arm. As far as the problem was concerned. And I got to be careful of what I say on the air as well, because we obviously want to give out tickets to Live Nation shows because they got the biggest shows in town. We'll never be able to give away tickets for Foo Fighters ever again if Live Nation was like, F you guys, right?
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. But it was interesting to see that, okay, this looks like this is only a temporary fixer right now. And will it go past 2023 into 2024? And then will it make a new model? Because I feel like them not taking a merch cut from bands in venues that are, 2,000 or lower doesn't necessarily hurt them because they're still making liquor sales and everything else, parking sales, ticket sales, So what do you think about that?
I mean, so what I was told by a friend of mine that's production manager at another Live Nation venue is that the On the Road program, which includes the $1,500 stipend on top of their already guaranteed pay, that ends at the end of this year. That's done. I have been told that the no merch fees for those clubs they listed is going to go through next year. And
that's good.
That is good. That is a great thing because the thing that's important to remember here, though, is that a lot of those club venues that are on this list of no merch fees, those are venues that artists or their merchandise managers would be selling at anyways.
Right. It's their people that are doing the labor.
Exactly.
So what are you getting a cut for? Just a little 6-foot table space? Yeah.
I mean, that's the argument from the venues. We're renting you space to sell your product in our venue. And my whole take, because I used to be a former merch manager, is if the artist is doing it themselves and they've done all the work, there should be no merch fee. But if you're playing at a bigger place, like an arena or a big theater, and they have a crew that's doing everything for you because you have multiple stands or whatever, then yeah, those people need to get paid. So there's a merch fee. So when you look at the list of venues, it's all artist sells venues anyway. So basically what they're doing is saying, hey, we're cutting merch fees at all these venues that should have never had them in the first place anyways.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So,
and I don't like that argument saying, hey, we're renting space in the venue anyways, because it's like, hey, these people wouldn't be here tonight if it wasn't for that act. Let's not forget what fills up those venues. And if there's no draw on these bands, no matter how good the band is, no matter how good the promoter is, if the band doesn't have a draw, then people aren't going to be there to buy stuff in the first place. We're continuing the conversation with TankThetech. We're going down the rabbit hole. He started off in a band before he became a tech and a roadie. I have several friends who've done this path as well, become guitar techs and then go on the road. That's how you do it. But it does start with being a musician and knowing what you're doing. And his band, INEPT, is actually kind of a big deal in Chicago. They actually played the Metro, and I want to show you a little clip of a performance they did at the Metro on the podcast broadcast. You can join us, youtube.com/beefvegan. We'll be back with more with TankThetech right after this on Rock 102.1 KFMA.
As deep dive is blowing your mind, isn't it?
I just haven't thought about this stuff in so long.
I'm fucking Nardwaring you, dude.
It's just wild. Like, I don't know. I still keep up with a couple of my old band members. Like we're very close friends. But we
are you friends with all of them?
I still talk to like two. One of them stood in my wedding. Like we're still very good friends. The other guys are still kind of, they're friends, but we don't talk a lot. But one of them.
What about the lead singer? You still friends with the lead singer?
Yeah. I mean, we don't talk like daily, but we'll chit chat every now and then, and he's a great dude. And yeah,
it's still brotherhood. I mean, how long were you in INEPT? I mean, because you were touring at an early age, so this is a high school band.
No, actually, so it's funny. These guys were already established, and my old band that was like high school band, we used to open for these guys in Chicago. And
Okay,
then,
so they were kind of like the local legends in a way, the big draws locally. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'd open for them at Metro, House of Blues, stuff like that. And then when they had an opening for a bass player, I just kind of went for it. They were having auditions, and I went and auditioned. And then, like 2 days later, they took me to a show with them to see how I did on stage, and then that was that. Like,
let me ask you this: you seem basically you seem very intelligent. So, like from the very beginning, were you kind of like a band dad, where you were handling the responsibilities of like the tour and stuff? Because I feel like once you said, okay, you know what, I need to make money, and you started teching and being a roadie, that the band kind of like fizzled out, meaning that the person behind them, making the business decisions, being responsible, part of the business part of the music business, which every good band needs, was gone.
I actually, I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
I would say that our guitar player, Kevin, he was more of the business mind of the band. He was the one that did what a manager or a booking agent would do and stuff like that. But when we got on the road, I was basically like our built-in tour manager. Like I was driving everywhere. I was doing everything. I think it was more coincidence that the band kind of fizzled out. I don't think it had to do with anything with me leaving. I think we were all at a burnout point. I just happened to be the first one that was just like, all right, I'm out. And then after that, everybody else kind of left too and did their own thing. But you do see those things coming at times. And, we toured in a van and trailer together for 3 years straight with barely going home. We just kept getting like opening slots on tours over and over. Like, we toured with, we became really good friends with like A Day to Remember. When their first album came out, we were touring with them. All Time Low, like Mayday Parade, Medina Lake, all these bands from back in the day. And, in 3 years, and we didn't even have it comfy. It's not like we were in like a 15-passenger van that we had decked out. We were in a Chevy Astro van, like a minivan. It was just the five of us. And what it really was after 3 years of touring nonstop, and nothing really happening. I mean, we kept getting great tours. That's awesome.
Right.
I didn't have more than like $20 in my bank account at all times for like 3 years. Like, I learned to live broke. There were days where I would have to borrow like $2 from one of my other band members that had a job back home when we weren't touring, so that I could eat like $1 cheeseburger at McDonald's. And eventually it just gets tiring. Like, no matter how much you like doing what you're doing, you can't live like that. Nope. And it got to a burnout phase where, again, it's just a weird way the universe works. Like, a band that we were touring with,
Red.
Red, actually. They started taking us on tour. We had actually met them. We got on a support slot with Trapped back in the day.
Okay.
And Red was on that. And we did a one-off with Red one day. And the lighting at the show was not good. Like, the house lighting designer, it just wasn't good. And one of the band members was like, man, I wish there was somebody on this tour that knew how to do lighting. And I worked at a venue when we were home. And I was like, well, I know how to run a lighting desk. And they're like, do you really? I was like, yeah. So they're like, can you try and do it for us tomorrow? And I was like, yeah. So I ran their lighting for their show after we'd opened for them. They loved it. And they're like, hey, would you do our lighting every day for us if we like took your band on tour every time we toured, and we'd kick you like, I think it was like $35. And I was like, yeah. Cause at the time, $35, I was like, yeah.
Yeah. It's like 115% raise, dude.
Yeah. So eventually it got to a point where we did a couple more tours with them. And then I went to their guitar player one day, and I'm just like, dude, and this was me not trying to get a job. This was just us talking as fellow musicians. I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And they were just like, well, if you decide to quit, we will hire you, because we would love to have an LD, and we need a new merchandise manager anyway. So if you could do both, we'll hire you. And long story short,
lighting director, merchandise manager. Yep.
Yeah. And long story short, that happened. I left my band. It was very awkward. Very
it's
awkward.
almost like leaving them for another woman, right?
Dude,
it's
really?
like, yeah.
It was weird. It was like, I told them, and it was like a bad breakup. And I went on tour with Red, and like, again, this is just, behind the scenes industry. It's like my first pay with them on the road was like $75 per show day. And at the time, as like a 21-year-old, I was like, who had been making nothing for 3 years. I was like, I'm rich.
Yeah.
I have made it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then it kind of just went from there. And over the next, 15 years or whatever, I moved up and took on different jobs and learned how to do different things. And here we are.
Now, when you guitar teching is one of those things. So, I mean, you're a bass player, but I assume you know how to play guitar as well. You know how to, no?
Nope.
Really?
I'm horrible at guitar.
Oh, at least you could tune it.
Yeah,
yeah.
I can work on guitars. I can fix amplifiers. I can pretty much do anything I need to do to a guitar in terms of maintenance and working on it. But I am horrible at playing.
Yeah. Have you ever tour managed before Electric Callboy gave you the call? Because you did everything else.
I've had a couple assistant tour manager gigs with stuff.
There you go.
And I also had one other tour management gig on a technicality where I did pre-production for the tour. And it was the management situation and the band situation was so bad and a pain to deal with that I actually quit before the tour started. So technically, yes, I was a tour manager for another band, but technically no, because we never hit the road. So
wow.
I actually didn't let the Electric Callboy guys know that it was my first full tour as a TM.
Yeah. Well, did they bring it up to you first, or did you pitch it to them? Because I know that you talked with them interview style a couple times.
No. So the funny thing is that when they were supposed to do their original tour, I think it was 2022, October or whatever. I was going to guitar tech for them, and their manager called me and said, "Hey, they're coming to the States, and we want an American on the crew. Would you guitar tech?" And I said yes. So then when this tour was getting prepped, I was under the assumption that I was guitar teching. And then when their production manager sent me their rider that has their crew and everything in it, I noticed that they had a guitar tech in there. And I was like, hey, you guys have a guitar tech listed on here? Am I assuming that you guys are wanting me to tour manage? And they were just like, yeah. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see my name where I thought it was going to be. What's happening?
Yeah. So they actually gave me the role without even really asking me if I could do it or if I was going to do it. And I just put myself in the mindset, dude, I've been an assistant tour manager enough times, and I've been on enough tours that I've seen how things should run, how they shouldn't run, that's all I needed. I just went into it with the mindset of I'm going to make this happen. And it was funny, after the third or fourth show, I finally told them, I was like, yeah, this is literally my first time sole head of a tour. And they're like, really? And I was like,
and what a great band to kick it off with, because Electric Callboy are the nicest men in rock.
And it was a fully sold out show or
tour.
Tour. So,
the nicest people I've ever toured with. And I'm not just saying that. I really, truly mean that. They are the nicest people I've ever been around in my entire life. It was almost mind-blowing seeing how they operate, because I've never been around a band like that.
Yeah, no, they were super kind, and German. I guess there's a lot of kind Germans out there.
I guess.
Who would have known?
Yeah, I mean, we had a fantastic time. You guys hosting us backstage, it was so nice.
Everyone couldn't have been nicer. So we're getting on the air right now, and I'm going to ask you this, and this is for all my aspiring musician friends out there that are listening. Welcome back to Rock 102.1 KFMA. We're talking with tankthetech. Of course, he has a YouTube page, that's at tankthetech. On Twitter, everything. Twitch, it's tankthetech. That's how you can find Tank. Check out his daily live streams and his video content. He puts together fantastic stuff, and just did his first tour managing gig, solo tour manager for Electric Callboy. It was a sold out show across America. Overwhelming success, and he nailed it, knocked it out the park. Now, for people who are listening, aspiring musicians who may work their way to guitar tech and whatnot, and try to get into the music industry on a production side, what are some of the responsibilities a tour manager has to do, to have a successful tour?
So tour managing starts and ends with the planning and organization of everything. What a lot of people don't know is that, our tour started in late August. I've been working on this tour since mid-March. That's everything from getting a hold of bus companies to rent buses for the tour and trailers and stuff like that, getting a hold of all the production companies. Since they were coming from Europe, we had to rent everything production-wise that you saw on the stage, the lighting, the video, the backline. The only thing that they really brought with them were some of their audio things and their guitars.
Right.
Everything else was I had to find backline providers and production providers for all of that. And
did you use connections to find those sources, or did you Google it?
No, those were all like from over the years of touring. These are all companies that I was already very well familiar with, that I knew like that's who I was gonna go to no matter what.
Right.
So that's just, meeting people over the years and making good connections and going to the companies that I've used on tours already that I like. But then, once you get that stuff locked in, then you got to get to the tour advancing part of it. So a month out from every show, I reach out to the venues and we go over everything. We go over how many vehicles we're traveling with, how many vehicles are with the support bands, the schedule of the day, how many people we're going to have with us, what's in our hospitality rider. And then that's just us. Then we need to talk about the venue, what their load-ins look like, how big are their doors. That's a big thing that I feel like people don't, oftentimes production managers and tour managers kind of miss that on some tours I've been on, where we may have video carts that are 6.5 feet tall and maybe the venue doesn't have a door that those fit in. And we actually did run into that a couple times on this tour.
Where at?
Where did we have to, House of Blues, Chicago.
The
Palladium in New York, and the Brooklyn Bowl in Philly. We actually had to rent video for those because we couldn't fit our production through their doors.
Now, were those just like older buildings?
Yeah, old buildings.
Oh yeah.
It's some of those things too were elevator issues. Like the Brooklyn Bowl in Philly, they don't have an actual freight elevator. They just have a passenger elevator that's only like 7 feet deep, and our carts were 8 feet long. So we just physically couldn't fit them in. So those are the things that when you advance a show ahead of time, you got to find out, because you need to know, like, you have to have alternate options if it's not going to work. And, that's why I'm such a stickler with logistics. Like, that's why that, going back to the Blue Ridge thing, that's why I was so annoyed that day, was because I advanced that show a month ahead of time and then a week ahead of time. And, the big problem, like I had said, was it seemed like production that I advanced with didn't relay any of that information to the stage managers and stuff. So it was
right. You're doing your due diligence and your job, and then they were dropping the ball. Right. Yeah. We're talking with tankthetech. We're going to keep the conversation moving on the podcast broadcast. Be back right after these words. And, Tank is always kind of giving his viewers a heads up on bands he's excited about. So I want him to give us his top 5 bands he's excited about. He's a big fan of like metalcore and hard bands. So he's going to get you guys privy to what should be on your radar musically right after these words on Rock 102.1 KFMA.
Oh, put me on the spot here.
Oh yeah. By the way, that's what you're doing next. That's what I do though, Tank. Dude, I'm just like, oh, by the way, we're doing that. And surprise.
I listen to so much music, man. I think I have a good idea of the bands that, like, I definitely want to bring up.
Right. And I wasn't going to say Mount Rushmore, right? Of your all-time greatest, but I'm just saying recently of bands, that you've done reactions with where that you've had a visceral reaction. And what's great about Tank's reactions is because he is a musician. He knows how to break it down from a musician standpoint. So very technical and explaining, what they're doing musically. Mm-hmm. I'm more of a lyrical kind of reaction and like harmony and how I feel on it, but I don't know the technical aspects of it.
Right.
So I know that there's some bands, I'm sure, that you're getting suggested all the time from your Twitch streamers or, on YouTube, and then that you've checked out and you're like, oh my God, like, I'll ask you this question right off the bat. What's a band that you've heard recently that you were like, I wish that was my band? Like, if I was still touring, I wish I was in that band.
Oh, I mean, Orbit Culture.
Orbit Culture, nice.
Orbit Culture is my number one right now in terms of, I've often said sometimes that their music for me is like somebody got inside my brain and wrote music specifically for me. Like,
nice.
Gotta love that. Yeah. You have to love when that happens. Yes.
So that's my big number one right now. I actually just saw them live about a week ago in Nashville, and it was the biggest show I've ever seen them play at, and it was just fantastic. And the thing I love about that band is that it's just 4 guys. There's nothing crazy. There's no like gimmick or stage thing. It's just, they're just metal dudes. They just all black, walk on stage, headbang their faces off for their whole set, and they just write ripping metal, and it's great.
I'm glad that Orbiculture is the name of that band. I got easily distracted. You did mention Nashville. I did want to ask you this because you're a Chicago boy, kind of like South Side, even though like suburbs or whatnot. So like Wayne's World, think Aurora.
Yeah.
But you're a White Sox fan, right?
Yeah.
And the White Sox are rumored to be potentially moving to Nashville. Have you heard this rumor? You don't think it's going to happen?
I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, how stoked would you be if that was the case? Do you secretly want your Chicago White Sox to move closer to your home?
I don't know. I really don't know, because while I've lived in Nashville for like 13 years now, none of these sports teams here are like my teams. Like I'm still Chicago through and through. So
right.
I don't know how it'd feel if it ended up being like the Nashville White Sox, or if they changed their name or something like that. But I just don't think that's going to happen. Like,
no, they're too big there.
No, you got to understand, like south side of Chicago right now, they're having their own issues. And of course, they obviously have two major teams with the Cubs being there too in that market. It's a possibility. I mean, teams move all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, not a team that's been around for literally over 100 years, but it can happen if the money's right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, never say never. I don't see it happening, considering like the ownership and just the Cubs undeniably have the bigger market for sure.
Oh, yeah.
White Sox fans are die hard, man. They're like middle class, hardworking. Like they love their team so much. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, in fact, I have a brick from Kaminsky Park at my house right now because my father-in-law was diehard White Sox fan. I grew up a Cubs fan, so that was always a fun conversation to have with him. But yeah, I have a brick from Kaminsky Park. Like they don't mess around when it comes to the White Sox.
Oh, yeah, dude, boo this woman.
I'll tell you right now, the Cubs White Sox rivalry in the Chicago area goes so deep that like when I was in high school, like I don't care how much I liked a girl. If I found out she was a Cubs fan, couldn't do it.
Deal breaker. That was a deal breaker, huh? That's funny.
That's like being a Bears fan and finding out that you're like dating a Packers fan. Deal breaker. Like, yeah, it's not gonna happen.
So I take it your wife now is not a Cubs fan. So good?
She grew up in the South, and I don't think she cares about baseball at all. So.
Fair enough. You got a question for Tank real quick? Because I know that we're going to be getting back on the air.
Well, I mean, you talked about the fact that like you do like metalcore and heavy metal and everything else, but you said you toured with country artists for like 6 years.
Yeah.
Like, is that something that you sought out? You're like, I really do love metal music, but I don't want to like ruin the image of my heroes. Let me go in a different genre to tour with.
It was actually kind of, again, like one of those weird chance things where I was on a tour that I was actually on a gospel tour.
Okay, then.
Absolutely horribly run. I hated it. And a friend of mine called and said, hey, there's this country artist that's looking for a new guitar tech. And, he's like mid-level. He's starting to get big. And I was like, well, I don't really know anything about guitars. He's like, yeah, but you're a bass player. Like, it's the same thing with 2 extra strings. You can figure it out. So I did. I took the job, and I got myself in the mentality that I was like, well, if I'm going to be a guitar tech now, I'm going to just learn everything and be the best that I can. So it was kind of on accident that I got that country gig, but it turned out great because I will say, like country music is not really modern country is not really my thing, but they take care of their crews very well. And it was a good paying gig, and it was comfortable touring. But I mean, even before that, I had done pop tours. I did classic rock tours for years. Like, I would say Electric Callboy is probably the heaviest band I've ever worked for, actually.
Oh, wow. So it's like almost a return to your roots in a way.
Yeah,
even though
it
it's hard
feel
to
like
say.
that. It definitely felt like that, because the majority of my career I had been bouncing between like classic rock, like pop and stuff like that, and then country, and then like doing Electric Callboy was like I felt like I was at home. I was like, yeah, this is where I belong. And
your people, what was the biggest tour that you were a tech or roadie
on? Well, probably Van Halen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When Eddie was still alive, huh?
Yeah, I did merchandise on that one, and that was when Dave was back in the band, when Wolfgang had just joined playing bass. And
Wolfgang's super nice kid.
Oh, he's super nice. And right before that, I had done merchandise on Nickelback. So it was either one of those 2 tours were probably the biggest. But in terms of actual tours, like not the artists because I worked for those artists. When I worked for Dustin Lynch, we did tours with Luke Bryan where we were playing stadiums. We were doing Gillette Stadium. Like,
Oh, wow.
We did a whole tour with Luke Bryan where we did nothing but NFL stadiums. So technically I wasn't working for the headlining artist, but I was on those tours.
Still there. And it's great to see, like, you know, a part of your run of being in this industry for now going on close to 15 years is that you've seen the heart of the house of all these iconic buildings and venues, from clubs to stadiums, and seeing all that is always cool to me, like behind the scenes stuff, to see how things run and how it works and how comfortable they make it for the athletes or artists. It's pretty cool. So we've been talking with tankthetech all this broadcast, who was a tour manager for Electric Callboy, and he has a fantastic channel. I actually became a fan of his while researching Electric Callboy. And then to meet him in person, I geeked out on him just like I geeked out on the band. It was an equal thing. Yeah. And I was like, nice to meet you guys. Tankthetech, what's going on? So, you know, if you like reaction videos, you like just all different types of content that focuses on music, Tank does it as good as anybody else on YouTube. I guarantee that. So before we wrap up the show, we only got about 2 minutes. Did you think about the bands recently, and maybe we'll narrow it down to three bands that you reacted to this year that should be on everybody's radar? Tank, take it away.
Okay, so the first I've already mentioned is definitely Orbit Culture. They're from a very small town in Sweden. They, in my opinion, the future of modern metal. I mean, what they're doing right now is so good, and their last album that just came out is so good, and they are the nicest, most humble guys. Like, everybody should be checking out Orbit Culture. Nice. God, this is so hard. I'm like looking through my playlist right now. Another band that I always throw out there that I absolutely love right now too is Bloodywood from New Delhi, India. If anybody's not
really,
if anybody is not familiar with Bloodywood, I would kind of consider them like a little modern new metal with a little bit of folk element in there too, because their guitar player will play like flutes and whistles and stuff, and they also have a dole player in their band that's just playing like traditional Indian drums and stuff. But they mix, they have 2 vocalists. One of them does harsh vocals, the other one raps, and their album that came out not too long ago is one of my favorite albums of the entire year, Bloodywood.
Top to bottom, huh?
Check out.
All
so
right.
good. Man, you know what? I'm going to throw a wild one out there.
All right, give me that wild one.
I'm going to throw a super wild artist out there because I've recently, because of the Electric Callboy guys, I have gotten into hardstyle EDM. And there is an Italian DJ named Ruler, Rooler, that I cannot stop listening to his like remixes and his stuff that he's released.
Hold that thought real quick, because we got a hard stop on the FM side. Thank you guys for listening, and we're going to continue the conversation. Broadcast, youtube.com/PeteVegan.
But if we're going bands, there are some under the radar bands, dude. Like there's another Ukrainian band called Space of Variations. Those guys, again, one of the most under the radar releases of last year. Their album that came out is fantastic from start to finish. They are on Napalm Records, and I'm actually shocked that they aren't like bigger than they are because they're really good. But a lot of my music I've been listening to lately is a lot of German metalcore bands, because I think in the U.S. we get so wrapped up on what's going on here that a lot of the bands overseas don't make it over here.
Right, yeah.
So I've been listening to a lot of like German metalcore and stuff like that. A new band that came out somewhat recently is called Future Palace from Germany. Fantastic band. They actually
did the boys from Electric Callboy turn you on to them, or
no? Actually, funnily enough, when the Electric Callboy guys were asking me what German bands I was familiar with, I was naming them stuff that they didn't even know. They were like, "You know more German bands than we do."
That's funny.
And like the power metal scene is huge in Germany too. Like I listened, like Ordenogen is another band from Germany that's awesome. Like, dude. The one thing I love about this YouTube channel, honestly, is that it has allowed me to discover more music in the past few years than I've discovered in like the last 15. And there are so many good bands out there that will never be seen just because of chance and because of oversaturation that, man, it's just there's so much good music everywhere right now.
Well, and you're doing essentially what's close to my heart as well. And one of the reasons why I love radio and connecting with people is turning them on to artists that I believe in as well. And as your channel continues to grow, and then you have your faithful that are following, and it's not people that are coming there because you're reacting to their favorite band anymore. Now you're turning people on to other bands because they're a fan of you. And I've always said that like when it comes to talking to different artists, like I'm a fan who has fans, right? Whether whatever that metric is, doesn't matter, and it's small, but still there's a fan who has fans, and then you reacting to different bands that you're a fan of to your fans that you've been continuing to build up. It's impressive to see, and in such a short amount of time as well. I see that YouTube plaque behind you, man. It did fantastic. Is there any tips and tricks for any aspiring YouTubers out there that you could share? Present company included. Right. Seriously,
I think
we fucking suck at this.
I think the thing that I figured out after a while was in the internet world where there's so much just over the top sensationalist stuff, I think people really enjoy authenticity. So I really, when I do my stuff, it's like I make sure that whatever comes across on video is the same person that you're going to see if you were to meet me in person. But, a lot of YouTubers that I know, if their videos don't do well, they will always find something to blame it on, whether it's the algorithm, whether it's, something like that. But something that I was told by another bigger YouTuber early on was content is king. If your videos aren't doing good, you need to look at your content. Don't make excuses for anything else. Just look at the content and see if it's stuff that like you would enjoy watching. So that's what I try and do. I try and make content that I myself would enjoy watching as well. And if there's been times where I watch back some of my videos I've edited and I'm just like, I don't know if I would watch this. And oftentimes those videos don't do as well as the other ones.
So yeah, you believe in your content. If you know it's good, then you should get the results. And if you're not getting results, then you need to ask those hard questions. Is it good? Yeah. And I'm just saying that out loud for future me to watch this back and be like, oh, that's what it is.
Well, and there's sometimes that it's weird that like I'll just be like cruising down shorts on YouTube or whatever, and now you've been posting more, and I'm like watching. I'm like, oh my god, that's funny. I was like, oh, that's me also on the video. Like I forget sometimes that I'm on this show because when you do crank out the content, like I'll be like, that was funny. Or like even if it was a day I wasn't on, like
I know.
So
it is a lot of stuff. So per video and stuff, how many hours you putting into it? I mean, you record it and you prep it, and then you got to edit it and all that.
I mean, to be 100% honest, I don't really prep anything. I actually think that's one of the things that's worked for me is there's a certain rawness to my videos where I don't know what I'm doing editing, and there's like mistakes and stuff that I just keep in where it makes it funny. Yeah. I don't really prep videos. I don't write scripts. I don't like when it comes to the reaction videos, you'll see like I film an outro, I film the reaction, and I film the intro, I film the reaction, and I film the outro. There's no cuts during the reactions. But the most time consuming thing is the video editing. So I would say to make a 12 to 15 minute video for me on YouTube, I mean, that's 3 or 4 hours of editing. But then after that, you have to create a thumbnail and do all the tagging and do all the SEO stuff. And it gets time consuming. And I know there's a lot of people out there that think that, video, like doing YouTube and TikTok and all that stuff is like super easy and lazy and lame and stuff. But I'm like, there's so much time that goes into it. I didn't realize it either when I first started. There's so much time that goes into it. That's why you look at some of the bigger YouTubers, like, I've seen interviews with Mr. Beast where like the biggest YouTuber on the planet. And he literally has admitted, he goes, I don't do anything else ever. He goes, I'm always doing something with content every minute that I'm awake. It doesn't matter whether it's checking comments or planning videos or he's like, if you're going to make a career out of that, you have to spend every minute thinking about it.
Yeah, especially to be the level he is. And he is, Mr. Beast is the first logo that's sponsored or first sponsor of an NBA team jersey from a content provider.
I saw that. Yeah.
That's how massive Mr. Beast is. Yeah, it is a lot of work, and you're doing great work, and keep up the great work. And I appreciate you hanging out and talking with us this entire time. Big fan. And what's your next tour? Do you know if you're going to do another tour here soon? You booked up already?
So Yes and no. I can say it because they've said it. Electric Cowboy is coming back to the States next year.
Are they going bigger? So they sold out all these 2,000 person rooms from coast to coast. So the inevitable step is a little jump up, huh?
Yeah. I can't say much more because it hasn't been announced, but I have seen the routing. I have seen the venues, and it will be bigger.
Good.
Oh, that's exciting.
Well, I won't have you say anything else on this live stream. And just stick around for 2 seconds, and we'll see if Arizona's on that bill. But
we'll get the off the record.
Yeah, I thank you, brother. And again, tankthetech everywhere you look online. If you guys make sure you get a chance, subscribe if you're already not subscribing, and check out his content and his channel. It's fantastic. So thanks for watching.